Summoning energy! The witch is back. Hello my lovelies, my name is Christy and I am a witch. Practicing witchcraft in this witch's humble opinion, practicing witchcraft is constantly a learning process. No matter how long you've been practicing, there is always something new to learn. This video is inspired by my friend Dylan, who has been using Magic the Gathering cards as an oracle deck. Inspired by that, I wanted to do something that was new and outside of my comfort zone and maybe a little bit nerdy. I will be honest with you, I am still fairly new at tabletop RPGs. I have not played a whole lot of sessions, I've played a few, but one thing that has always attracted me to it is the dice. I have one set that has been woefully unused for a couple of years now. There are forms of divination that use dice and numerology, but they aren't really covered as much as tarot, runes, pendulums. On the internet, I found a bunch of variations of dice sets that have astrology symbols or other symbolism instead of numbers, but I am going to be sticking to just your standard tabletop RPG dice set, specifically the D20. They're cheap, pretty easily accessible, and they're something that is very closet witch friendly if you do not want to have a bunch of clearly divination tools out. People might just think that you're into tabletop RPG games. And maybe you are. This is something that I believe you can double up the use of and use for both magical and mundane purposes. Cleansing and consecrating. I highly recommend doing any form of cleansing, even if it is the knocking or shaking method instead of a full like smoke cleansing, but you can do that. I usually use sound cleansing or setting them in salt overnight. I recommend it just so that you aren't carrying any of the store's energy or your last game's energy, especially if it didn't go well. You don't want to carry that into whatever your divination is. So do your cleansing method of choice. And you can consecrate these for specifically the purpose of divination, or you can choose not to and you can just use them as your dice set and then cleanse them and then use them for divination. It's whatever you prefer. When I came up with this idea, I did find several other videos and posts about how other people use D&D dice for divination, but I decided to come up with my own method or methods so that it felt very personal to me. Roll for intelligence. The first method that I tried to look into, something that I could use all of your standard tabletop RPG dice set. Even though I knew I wanted to come up with a way specifically formulated for me to use these dice, I did want to look into how these dice have been used historically. Dice, not RPG dice, but dice in general. So I set out on a quest to my personal bookshelf and then to the internet. Quest! From these resources, I found that casting dice has been traced back to multiple cultures, including ancient Greece, which really stuck with me because I am half Greek and that is a lot of my practice, so I dove into that. I found dice like these that were probably used for divination. This website suggested that the oracles may have had a guidebook or reference book, so each of the dice had a specific meaning. So I was initially really inspired by that, and I thought that I would come up with meanings and a little booklet for all of the meanings so that each of the dice had a different theme and element. And then I didn't do any of that. This was honestly the hurdle I could not get past, and partially why I have not come out with a new video for 4 months. It was like a brick wall between me and making new content. I just couldn't wrap my brain around it. So I scrapped it for something that I felt like I could process. One dice. I decided to work with one dice, specifically the most recognizable for D&D and probably the most used, the D20. And now we're in business. Roll for initiative. In tabletop RPG games, rolling for initiative is how you determine who is going to play first, particularly in battles. The first way I decided to use this is as a companion with my tarot and oracle decks. Sometimes when I'm shuffling, I get these jumper cards. And when I get a lot of them, sometimes I get lost in the order of things. With this method, we're going to use the dice to clarify if there is an order to this story. What I did was roll for each card and place it in order. I decided to roll with 1 being first and last 20 rather than highest roll goes first. How you decide to do it is up to you. With more cards, it may be easier to make a quick note of what number you rolled with each card. Now, if you get duplicate numbers, you could re-roll to see which one of those goes in which place, or you could just simply assume the message is those 2 cards together. Before this, I was just placing these cards with my intuition, which you absolutely can do. But sometimes we just hit a wall, especially as our intuition is first developing, or we are reconnecting with that part of ourselves, or if we just are having a rough day. So in those cases, rolling for it was so helpful. Roll for initiative part 2, call your guides. Another way I've been using this initiative roll is for what my priorities should be. Sometimes we have so many desired goals that we don't really know what to focus on first. But I often feel that it's stronger for me to do magical workings when I am focused on one thing at a time. So with this method, I just find out my order of priorities. Now for this method, I asked my D20 to be a direct line to my guides. This could refer to deities, spirit guides, ancestors, the elements, nature, the universe, or even just tapping into your own intuition. Whatever it means to you, whatever you want to connect with. Meditate or do some kind of activity that makes you feel closest to what or whoever your guiding force is. State your intention and your parameters out loud. In this case, it would be something like, I call upon my guides, or insert here, whatever you would like, to aid me in defining my initiative. I will state my goal for each one, with the lowest 1 coming first and the highest 20 last. Again, in traditional tabletop games, that's reversed, but my brain could not process that. So you can do it that way if you resonate with that more, but this felt more natural to me for some reason. Then I use my notes app or an actual pen and paper and roll for each goal and write down where it falls. After you're done rolling, reflect on it. Your intuition will be needed here because you may roll and realize that you put your career goals last, but that's the one you now feel you don't want to put in the backseat for later. Follow that instinct because your intuition or guides may have just needed to show you what you really want by letting your instincts react to it. Skill check. In a lot of tabletop games, the most common roll is a skill check, which is just to see how well you pulled something off. 1 means you failed miserably, and 20 means that it was immaculate. 20 out of 10, incredible work. So for this, I decided to start rolling for when I'm doing magical workings, how effective I pulled it off, or alternatively, how much additional work I am going to need to put into to achieve those goals. Rather than interpreting how much I failed or need to just sit back and let something happen because I did it perfectly the first time, I want to interpret this as how much effort I should put in off the bat. This way I can adjust my expectations as needed. So closer to 1, I need to either reevaluate what I am working toward, or I need to be prepared to put in a lot of effort right out the gate. Closer to 20, maybe don't panic as much. Maybe ease into it, start doing some actions, but don't feel like you need to stress yourself out over it just yet. Of course, there will always be work to do and actions to take, but when I roll closer to a 20, that means that maybe I don't have to dive in like I'm swimming against the current just to start out with. Instead, I could have a slower, more relaxed approach. This can be rolled for spell work, divination, clarification, or just everyday stuff. Always keep in mind with any form of divination that there is room for error or flexibility. Nothing is set in stone. This is just a way for you to tap into your intuition or connect with your guides so that you can get some guidance by yourself, by external forces, whatever you choose to do. And if you roll all ones, do not be too discouraged by those results. Again, one of the strongest aspects of this, I felt, was making me realize what answers I wanted versus the ones that I got. And maybe even answers will come from that reflection and not the roll of the dice. Thank you so much for joining me on my journey to D20 divination. It was a long journey to get here, but what's important is that I eventually made it. I personally think I will continue to practice with these methods when the opportunities arise for them. Let me know in the comments if you are using dice already or if you plan on trying any of these methods out. I would love to know. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Blessings!